Did you know high-quality versions of all episodes of Freedom Rocks are available on DVD? Each DVD contains 3 episodes for just $15. We also have specials that aren't on our CTV or YouTube. You can find links to all of our DVDs on the Freedom Rocks website, freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com.
Fact. Hi, welcome to Freedom Rocks. I'm Max Kessler, and joining me today is Chris Edes, one of the hopefuls for the 2014 Libertarian nomination for governor. Now, we all know that the odds of anybody other than Führer, or I should actually, he's Italian, I should say Emperor Cuomo being reelected are slim to none. But I understand you have another goal in mind.
Yes. Well, I could still accomplish something positive without complete victory. Oh, of course, that's what I'm striving for. If I get 50,000 votes, then the Libertarian Party is able to become a recognized party in New York State.
Constituted political party.
Constituted political party, recognized by New York State, in which case the process of getting on the ballot would be much easier. For instance, here in the city of Rochester, where you need 1,500 ballot signatures, which translates to, about 2,500 raw signatures, we would need, the last time I looked, 2 signatures. And it would be pretty easy to verify that those were good signatures. And, it's not to say the disparity be that great.
Yeah, but just to be safe, you ought to go for 4.
Right. I mean, I could get notarized affidavits, along with the signatures. So, and it's not to say that everywhere in the state the disparity would be that great, but we would easily be able to run 100 times as many candidates with the same number of signatures. And certainly for statewide, we wouldn't need any signatures at all. The state committee would just pick somebody.
Is that for all statewide offices or just for subsequent
It's all
governor?
Statewide offices. If somebody gets at least 25% of the vote, they automatically appear on the ballot.
25% of the state committee?
Yeah, of the state committee's vote. Then if they don't get that,
good luck getting 25% of the Libertarian Party of New York State Committee to agree on anything.
Right. Well, I mean, if they don't, then it would be interesting to see how our rules for voting would apply. The way we sort of remove the lowest vote getter and then have another round of voting. Okay.
For those who don't know, the Libertarian Party, and just to be clear, Freedom Rocks is a libertarian-oriented show, not a Libertarian Party show. But the Libertarian Party believes, generally speaking, that it's better to not run a candidate than to run a candidate you oppose. So every ballot for nominating officers within the party as well as nominating candidates contains a special entry called NOTA, N-O-T-A, which stands for none of the above. And when they hold their voting, any candidate who does not receive enough votes to win the nomination or a seat on the committee or whatever, the lowest vote getter gets eliminated. The lowest vote getter other than NOTA gets eliminated from the ballot, and they revote and revote and revote until there's a winner.
Right. And it would be interesting to see how that conforms with New York State election law. I don't believe that's how the currently constituted parties do it. But that's a problem I'm looking forward to having. I'd also like to look into, once we have constituted party status, requesting that we be allowed to hold caucuses rather than primaries, because there's tremendous taxpayer expense involved in holding primaries. Whereas a caucus, people simply get together in a room at the Barnes & Noble or whatever and cast their votes, and those tend to also be more committed people, and you give speeches, and it's not just like who I saw the most times on television.
Now, how much cost is there actually in holding primaries for smaller parties, like say the Green Party? Don't they basically just do an absentee ballot?
I don't know. I mean, I think absentee ballots are available, but I believe the state election law requires that they actually have places where people can come to vote. I know for the Democrats and Republicans, that basically means it's like a general election for that.
Well, on the other hand, there's a whole lot more of them.
Right. I don't know if the state would have fewer polling places open, or
Either fewer polling places or just do absentee ballots. Because I thought I remembered the was it the Independents or Conservative Party doing that, where all of their primaries were done by absentee.
I don't know. I think New York is one of those states, I think, where you have to have an excuse to use absentee ballots, like you're sick or you're on vacation,
or something the equivalent of an absentee ballot, some sort of mail-in ballot.
I don't know. I hadn't heard of that. I mean, that would be fine too. I happen to like caucuses because I think that people that show up there are committed to the cause and know what they're talking about. Because it takes more effort.
But of course, then you're going to get folks whining about democracy. Oh, but it's not democratic if everybody doesn't vote.
Well, everyone has a chance to vote in a party caucus as long as they're members of the party, just like the primary. They just have to,
Members or registered voters?
Yeah, registered voters.
Okay.
Enrolled
Enrolled.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's certainly something worth looking into. But the gist of it is that we could run just like many, many more candidates. And it would be a lot easier to get on the ballot. And because right now, I mean, often we have to hire people. So just all our volunteers are exhausted. Cash is depleted just to get to the starting line. And then, the other candidates arrive there, more or less rested and refreshed, due to their greater numbers of financial resources. And often the law requires constituted parties to get less signatures. For instance, in Congress, you need 1,250 to run as a Democrat or Republican and 3,500 to run as an independent nominating body. This is a ridiculous disparity, especially since the districts are generally gerrymandered to the point where the Republicans or Democrats have a strong enrollment advantage. And so you're not just, they may have to get signatures from Democrats or whatever, but here in the city of Rochester, that's like 8 out of 10 people that you see. So that's not a great...
Well, actually, no. The, what is it? I think it's a 3-2 Democratic relative to, what is it? 3-2 ratio of Democrat to non-Democrat.
Okay.
It's about what you said, 4-to-1 ratio of Democrat to Republican.
Yeah.
Because you have to account for all the blanks and enrollees of other parties. But we're coming up on a break. We'll be right back.
As you may have noticed, you can watch Freedom Rocks for free on RCTV or on YouTube, but it takes money to produce good quality TV shows. You can support Freedom Rocks by shopping at our Cafe Press shop. There you can find t-shirts for men and women, tote and gin bags, coffee mugs, beer steins, food and beverage thermoses, and a bunch of other items Cafe Press offers. You can find our shop at cafepress.com/freedomrocks, all lowercase and no apostrophe.
Welcome back to Freedom Rocks, DVDs of which are available on Amazon. Before the break, we were talking about running for office in New York with the ballot access, but I'd like to get into a couple more concrete issues. What do you think of state nullification of federal laws?
I believe that the 10th Amendment establishes a balance of power between the federal government and the states. I do not believe that on a matter of any law, the state is legally able to nullify federal law. But where it's a question of constitutionality, the states have the responsibility to make a determination as to whether a law is unconstitutional or not. And if it is clearly unconstitutional, like if it just said if you're a member of the Republican Party, the First Amendment doesn't apply. Something like that. The state would obviously say.
What about something like intra-state manufacture and sale of commercial goods?
I'd say that falls under the rubric of basically the same justification I was talking about. The Constitution gives the government power to regulate interstate commerce, does not give them the power to regulate intrastate commerce, and so any law which had as its purpose to regulate intrastate commerce would be unconstitutional. And the
Wickard and Raich versus Gonzalez Supreme Court rulings?
Which were?
The Wickard ruling from the 1930s involved a farmer who grew more wheat than his legal allotment under the American Agriculture Act because he grew a bunch of wheat within federal law for sale, but then he grew extra wheat for his family to eat. And so he was charged with violating the American Agriculture Act for growing too much wheat. And then later, Raich versus Gonzalez, Angel Raich was a medical marijuana patient who was raided by the FBI or DEA in California for growing and consuming marijuana for medical use under California's compassionate use law. And the Supreme Court ruled that insomuch as marijuana is a product, albeit illegal in interstate commerce, the fact that it's a commercial product means that people producing it and using it affects interstate commerce, and therefore intrastate activities could be regulated.
Well, that justification could apply to anything.
Mm-hmm.
It could be used to apply to absolutely anything. Of course, if there's more of something in one area, they're less likely to import it from other areas, but that's basically, a condemnation of self-sufficiency. And it just, as such, I don't think it makes a lot of sense.
Would you support state laws to criminalize the enforcement of unconstitutional federal laws?
I think so. And we would have to take it sort of on a case-by-case basis. If we're talking about the right to keep and bear arms, I think that it's very important that the states be proactive along with any.
I don't think that's going to be an issue in New York. Our laws are much more tyrannical than federal laws.
Well, hopefully we can change that. But when it comes to
something like
key protection of the Bill of Rights, I believe the state should take action. If it's a very minor matter, I wouldn't want to start, arresting federal agents.
What about something like expanding the definition of burglary to include any federal agent who engages in a so-called sneak and peek search under the Patriot Act?
I don't think I'd have a problem with that.
You wouldn't have a problem with criminalizing it?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with criminalizing it. Certainly given the recent revelations that the NSA is spying on our phones and our emails.
Yay. Edward Snowden, 2016.
Yeah, why not? Well, if he can get back into this country. And, of course, also the post office for years has been taking photographs of the outside of every piece of mail just in case they need that later. So it's basically, I think if they knew how to intercept carrier pigeons in mid-flight and photocopy their contents, they would be doing it. The only thing that's stopping them is they can't figure out how to do that. Right, yeah, that's the next step. So, it's clearly they're working towards a total surveillance state in direct contravention of the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. And something needs to be done.
And now if the feds seize records from cell phone companies, this metadata that lists every phone call ever made, by whom, to whom, GPS coordinates, and all that stuff. If a federal agent confiscates records like that from a company, should that be criminal?
I think so, because it's still personal information. Where does the metadata, stop and the actual data begin? I favor a broad interpretation of constitutional protections in the Bill of Rights. I mean, just because the internet wasn't around and we didn't have this metadata sitting around in 1783 or 1789 when the Constitution was ratified, anytime during that process, doesn't mean that the constitutional protections shouldn't apply. I'm reminded of Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, who recently said, well, does the First Amendment apply to bloggers? It's some 200-year-old document, not really up to date with today's times, So, and like it's no, of course it applies to bloggers. It applied to people that were pamphlet writers back during the revolutionary times, and they just took a piece of paper and were just I think this, and started passing it around and handing it to people, and that's just what bloggers do, or people on Twitter and things like that.
Oh yeah. Ben Franklin would have been all over Twitter.
Yeah.
He would have loved that.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, an expansive interpretation of Bill of Rights is definitely what I would favor.
Okay, and now we all know libertarians aren't fans of the drug war. Would you support arresting feds who arrest drug users? Arrest them for kidnapping.
Well, I think I want to say yes, but like I was saying before, I want to avoid armed standoffs as much as possible. And this is the thing. And this is actually something that I agree with, that the city of Rochester did in its drug enforcement a while back, is that they used the RICO law because the drug dealers were attempting to use violence against other drug dealers to reduce competition. And so that is a problem. I mean, people use violence against other people, that's a problem. And, if they do that to gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace, it's no different than going and blowing up your competitor's store. And so,
Okay,
in that
well,
case,
we've got to take another break. We'll be right back.
Did you know Freedom Rocks has swag? You can help stimulate the economy and show how much you like Freedom Rocks at the same time. We've got t-shirts for men and women. We've got coffee mugs and beer steins. We've got food and beverage thermoses. You can get your own Freedom Rocks swag with the show logo, as seen in the opening title of the show, right here at our Cafe Press shop. That's cafepress.com/freedomrocks.
Welcome back to Freedom Rocks. As always, I'd like to remind you that this is a cable access program. That means we don't get Nielsen ratings. So we don't know you're watching unless you tell us you're watching, which you can do by swinging by this website at the bottom of your screen, Freedom Rocks, that's freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com. Before the break, we were talking about arresting feds for violating non-laws.
right. So like I was saying, in certain cases where you're dealing with violent criminals and you're dealing with things like arresting them for those violent crimes, I think that.
But I was actually talking about simple possession.
Right. Yeah.
Either simple possession or if, and it looks like it may happen in the next several years, medical marijuana is legalized in New York. We could be dealing with feds coming in and arresting people just for growing and using their own medical marijuana. So in something like that case, in the Raich versus Gonzalez case, or a similar case, would you support arresting the feds?
Oh, absolutely. If they're going after a peaceful person and it's very clear that, that's what they're doing, it's somebody minding their own business, and then they'll walk up and throw them into jail for no reason, essentially, then.
To enforce an unconstitutional law.
Right. I mean, I think that would be a clear-cut case. I mean, certainly the state police should not assist. I think that I think that would be a kind of a rare event because the federal police do not have the resources to go after everybody like that. They can only try to make an example of people. And I think they would probably try to do that secretly. So the number of cases in which we would have that ability to arrest the federal agents, I think that would be very much hit and miss unless somebody tried to engineer a confrontation, and I would try to avoid that.
Okay.
I think that, I want to avoid
Too much confrontation.
too much confrontation, violence, people getting hurt. I'd try to avoid. That doesn't mean you don't resist tyranny, but you have to take the long run and say, well, what if if New York State had a libertarian governor?
Well, how about instead of forcibly arresting them, simply issue a warrant for their arrest?
That would be fine. Something.
Simply issue a warrant for their arrest and say, if they're caught doing anything, speeding or whatever, when the police do a background check, they look for warrants. At that point, make an arrest, but at least have that warrant out there.
Yeah.
Which incidentally, if there's a warrant for your arrest on a felony charge, you lose your right to keep and bear arms. And yes, that would include feds.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's if we have a state that has a libertarian governor, I think that's an opportunity to educate people and move things in a libertarian direction. So, starting the next civil war would not be, at the top of my list.
No, of course not.
But yeah, in the abstract, I would agree with you that, such actions are unconstitutional and, are worthy of arrest.
Okay. Now, just one quick final point on that. The Supreme Court has ruled very early on that any law that was passed in violation of the Constitution is in fact no law at all. I don't remember the exact wording, but if that's the case, if the feds pass a law that's unconstitutional, then that is no law. And if they're arresting people for violating no law, that's kidnapping.
I agree.
Now, I want to get to a couple other issues. On the drug war, you support repealing prohibition?
Yes. It should be...
Everything?
It should be completely done away with.
Everything? Every drug?
Eventually. I would start with marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I would allow people to see that was not a huge problem. And I think that would also, once you make something illegal, then, you open the door to, other forms of criminal activity. And I think that would get, the gang violence down a lot. I think that would, it would deprive the gangs of a cash flow, for one thing. And I think it would generally sort of calm things down. And I think then people would be able to take a more rational look at the remaining aspects of the drug war.
Okay. And other vice offenses, gambling, prostitution, stuff like that?
Yeah, that should be legal. I mean, anything that consenting adults do, it doesn't hurt anybody else, is their business.
Okay. Now, do you think Cuomo's going to get the casino gaming through in this term?
Well, it does. I mean, the casino gaming would require, successive votes of the legislature if we're talking about the same thing, and also would have to be on the ballot for the voters to decide on. So it's, it requires more than just getting it through the legislature now.
Okay.
Actually, I thought they did pass something of that nature in this term, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't remember. I was too busy focusing on the alleged New York SAFE Act.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting close to the end of an episode, but before we go, I just want to make sure I get this in. We're looking for guests, okay? In particular, with respect to vice offenses, we're looking for guests who've been victims of these unjust laws. So anyone who's and also we don't want to put anybody on the police's radar who isn't already there. So if you've been arrested for any vice offense, any nonviolent, purely vice offense, please contact us. through the show website, freedomrocks.cybermansoftware.com, because we want to get some interviews with folks who've been victimized by these unjust laws. Now, in the last half minute or so we have left, is there anything else you'd like to fit in this episode?
Well, let's see. Got about 20 seconds left on the clock. I would just say, if you're not familiar with my campaign, go to www.vote-for-chris.net. Take a look at my website.
And we'll see you next time.
Have you ever played WTF Sudoku?
You mean WTF as in what the f***?
Yes.
What the f*** is so all fired? What the f*** about Sudoku?
Regular Sudoku is played on a 9x9 grid with exactly one of every digit 1 through 9 in every row, column, and 3x3 grid.
So what?
WTF Sudoku is played on a 25x25 grid with exactly one of every letter A through Y in every row, column, and 5x5 group.
WTF. How can I play WTF Sudoku?
You can play it online at www.cybermansoftware.com/games. You can also buy a book of puzzles on Amazon.com. Just search for WTF Sudoku.
Book? You mean on paper?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's www.cybermansoftware.com/games or by searching for WTF Sudoku on Amazon.com?
Yes.